I take this opportunity, of course, to commend the Honorable Don Valinis, Minister of International Business, for his leadership in these matters, both in Barbados and as a Vice Chair of the steering group of the Global Forum, and also to thank his officers at the Ministry and stakeholders generally for helping us reach this far in our relationship with the Global Forum. As you are aware, Minister Innes has a long history of work in the international business and financial services sector. And as I understand it, it was his initiative that made this special occasion a reality for Barbados and the Caribbean. I take this opportunity also to laud the Global Forum for the strides made over the years. There is no disputing the significant progress the Forum has made since it was first established in the year 2009. As the Global Forum on Tax Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes approaches its 6th year of existence, you can reflect on the fact that the Forum has emerged to be a leading voice in international tax cooperation. The organization brings together some 127 countries to cooperate on transparency and exchange of information matters, and has undertaken peer reviews of 120 jurisdictions and provided training and technical support to many members. Much work and effort has gone into bringing us this far, and so this forum must not let anything undermine what it has already accomplished or impede the work that we are committed to achieving together in the medium and the long term. There are, however, some issues that I believe must be addressed at this juncture if the progress of developing countries, particularly small developing countries, is to be sustained. In that connection, I believe that the words of the former US President Franklin D. Roosevelt are apt. I quote him, "The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little," unquote. To give flesh to that quotation, I must share with you the origins of a small financial center like Barbados. Barbados is a country whose society and economy were based on the sugar plantation model imposed by a colonial system. Through the years, as the colonial power changed the arrangements for the export of sugar, which eventually operated under the European Economic Community, now the European Union, we had to seek other alternatives for our economy based on our special assets. These assets were good governance and transparency, respect for the rule of law and a good legal system, an excellent quality of education and a highly educated population, good communications and other infrastructure, a good social system, and overall, a high quality of life as assessed by the United Nations Development Program. These supported the infrastructure needed to establish Barbados as an international financial services center. We have nurtured the reputation of the services we provide jealously and spare no effort in doing all that we can to enable our jurisdiction to withstand the closest inspection. In the past, we had a comparative advantage in sugar, but that was slowly whittled away with competition. Now we have a competitive advantage in the area of financial services, for which we have worked very hard over the years. We do not wish to feel that each time that we develop a competitive advantage, the playing field rules will change and place us on a path of continually having to seek new and legitimate ways of providing for our people. Barbados, like other small financial centers in the Caribbean and elsewhere, is doing all within its power to comply with internationally agreed standards. We have been working assiduously to implement the recommendations coming out of our Phase 2 peer review, while at the same time readying ourselves for both the Foreign Accounts Tax Compliance Act, FATCA, and the automatic exchange of information as an early adopter. In that regard, please permit me to update you on our progress. We are pleased to announce that Barbados will be signing both the Multilateral Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters and the Multilateral Competent Authority Agreement during this plenary. Actually, the Multilateral Convention was signed yesterday, and the Competent Authority Agreement will be signed later today. Shortly thereafter, we will be requesting a supplemental report, as we have taken action that we believe should lead to an upgrade of our overall country rating from partially compliant to largely compliant. Barbados is also at an advanced stage in implementing the standard on automatic exchange of information as an early adopter. Our Parliament has recently passed legislation to give effect to the USA Foreign Accounts Tax Compliance Act, paving the way for Barbados to automatically exchange tax information with the United States of America. We express sincere thanks to the Global Forum Secretariat and the OECD for their support during this process aimed at reaching the highest international standard of automatic exchange of information. Let me assure all present that Barbados, like the other countries here today, remains fully committed to and actively engaged in the work of the Global Forum. Yet, despite the high level of compliance and cooperation as reflected in the forum, and despite the plethora of exchange of information agreements signed and implemented, as the Global Forum and the OECD will testify, some of us are constantly placed on the defensive. We've had to fight to defend our legitimacy and existence as international financial centers, a developmental option which is inextricably linked to our country's developmental goals and the well-being of our people. We are particularly concerned that even at this stage, when the Forum is considering its third mandate, there are still some member countries, even members of this Forum, that create blacklists of other countries without regard to the implications such actions could have. These events take us back to the pre-2009 period and the earlier times that led to our hosting here in Barbados the high-level consultation on harmful tax competition. I am mindful that it may be quite easy for some to forget the consistent and determined struggle of small financial centers like those in the Caribbean to have a voice and a say on matters of international tax cooperation. I believe that it is important for those present to reflect on the progress the Forum has made over the years, which has allowed for proper and respectful dialogue between interested parties. Let us not forget our history and repeat the mistakes of the past. I am mindful of the words of the first President of the United States of America, George Washington, that we should not look back unless it is to derive useful lessons from past errors and for the purpose of profiting by dearly bought experience. The recent publishing of a list by the European Union deeming 30 countries, including Barbados and others in the region, as non-cooperative and tax havens, once again highlights the concerns of the region regarding blacklisting by international organizations. This type of action can have a devastating impact on the reputation of our countries. It increases our risk profiles and affects our ability to retain or attract new investment, and also has the potential to jeopardize the ease with which investors can access funding. Now, as the current chairman of the CARICOM community, I should like to register our deep disappointment at the conduct of those in the European Union with whom we have had several fora for dialogue in this matter. Barbados and other Caribbean countries are therefore most grateful to both the director of the Center for Tax Policy and Administration with the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, Mr. Pascal Saint-Amand, and the head of the Secretariat of the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes, Ms. Monica Batia, for making it clear that, and I quote, as the OECD and the Global Forum, we would like to confirm that the only agreeable assessment of countries as regards their cooperation is made by the Global Forum, that a number of the countries identified in the EU exercise are either fully or largely compliant and have committed to the automatic exchange of information, sometimes even as early adopters. Without prejudice to countries' sovereign positions, we are happy to confirm that these jurisdictions are cooperative, and we would like to commend the tremendous progress made over the past years, as well as the cooperation and integrity of the Global Forum process, unquote. That intervention by the OECD and Global Forum has mitigated the impact of the damage to the reputation of our countries caused by that blacklist. Some countries have since contacted us, however, to clarify their positions, and we appreciate that initiative as well. If there's anything positive to be taken away from that unfortunate situation, it is that it brought into sharp focus the existence of blacklists, of which many of us were not aware. It brought into focus also the inconsistencies in the methods used to create and apply those blacklists. Having settled our position in relation to the European Union's lists, we soon had to contend with another one, this time not from a country, but from the District of Columbia in the United States of America. This occurred despite Barbados having in place a double taxation agreement, a tax information exchange agreement, and an intergovernmental agreement to implement FATCA and exchange tax information automatically with the United States of America. Again, in order to minimize any fallout, we've had to divert our already limited resources from use for developmental purposes to deal with this unnecessary new distraction. I strongly believe, ladies and gentlemen, that the blacklisting of member countries of the Forum by other members of the Forum should have no place in the life and operations of this great organization. This appears to be in direct contradiction to the express purpose for which the Forum exists. It is my view that the Forum should not leave here this week without having come to a clear position on the way forward on this important issue. I believe that with a concerted effort, we can address this matter appropriately. There's an equally worrisome issue in the resolution of which I suggest that the Global Forum has an important role to play. This relates to the purposes for which the Forum's work is used by some multinational financial organizations. We are aware that some multinational financial organizations have implemented policies that use the forum's ratings in a manner that, in effect, has the unintended consequence of penalizing countries that are rated partially compliant or lower. Barbados' experience has been that despite being fully engaged in the Global Forum's process and showing a real commitment to implementing the necessary recommendations, we were in danger of losing one of our major companies. In effect, a Barbados entity was having difficulty accessing financing from a multi-million-dollar project because we had not yet completed implementing a recommendation that could trigger a request to the Global Forum for a supplemental report within certain time frames set by the financial institution. In this case, the key issue we had to address in order to have an overall rating of at least largely compliant was a non-technical matter which had to do with our policy preference to negotiate tax treaties rather than tax information exchange. For us, tax treaties, in addition to providing for exchange of information in line with the standard, also facilitate trade and investment between countries. The Forum had deemed that we needed to respond to requests for tax information exchange agreements. We are well past that stage now, as we have signed on to the multilateral convention, as I indicated earlier. Unless such financial institutions communicate with both the Global Forum and the affected countries, they run the risk of making decisions without fully appreciating the peculiarities of the country and the progress it is making to address the concerns. This is even more so in cases where the Global Forum itself acknowledges the progress that the country concerned is making and is working with that country to help it to implement the recommendations. Under such circumstances, therefore, a country's development goals can be compromised because of the weight given to a policy which seems not to fully take into consideration that country's interaction with the Global Forum processes. I am of the view that there needs to be some mechanism to ensure that countries which have fully committed to the Global Forum's process and are actively taking the steps to implement recommendations to its satisfaction do not suffer the fate of being penalized by other agencies. I believe that the Global Forum has a very important role in contributing to this discussion. In relation to double taxation agreements, I should like also to urge the Global Forum to encourage its members, particularly the developed countries, to take action to ratify negotiated and agreed tax treaties. It appears that in the effort to quickly implement the standard on transparency and exchange of information, double taxation agreements have not been given their deserved priority. This leads us to a very important question that this 8th plenary of the Global Forum may want to consider in its deliberations. What role should the Global Forum play in addressing the wide range of tax and tax-related issues highlighted in the concerns of small, vulnerable countries? I believe that you are well aware of ongoing discussions on the role of the United Nations and the role it can play in these matters of international tax cooperation. The comments made in April 2011 by Her Excellency Mrs. Paulette Bethel on behalf of CARICOM on the report of the Secretary General on strengthening of institutional arrangements to promote international cooperation in tax matters remains relevant at this time and in our present circumstances. I quote, "It is the view of CARICOM countries that tax cooperation is an important aspect of the modern global economy, and while we recognize the efforts of existing bodies to coordinate international tax transparency matters, there still remains a need to establish a forum with universal membership embodying truly democratic principles and a level playing field, or as the Secretary General's report so succinctly puts it, a forum that would offer developing countries a full seat at the table." We subscribe to the principle that an effective response to a global crisis requires inclusive and comprehensive global action that allows for the participation of all concerned stakeholders, unquote. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, I should like to encourage you to have frank discussions over these next 2 days. May I suggest that you reflect deeply on the genesis of the forum, its objectives, its achievements, and any obstacles to future development with a view to addressing any issues that could undermine the progress made by this global forum so far. Being accountable to the people of Barbados, a small island developing country, and to the CARICOM community in my capacity as current chairman, it would be remiss of me not to leave you with a challenge. The challenge to be mindful of the far-reaching implications of your decisions and their likely effects, not just on a country or a region in the abstract, but on the lives of the actual people inhabiting the island nations of our highly prized Caribbean civilization. Thank you very much.